The Dallas Mavericks, led by a third-year player, just took the Clippers to 7 games. Now the question is, what's next? Where do they go from here? That's exactly what I want to talk about in today's video, so if you guys like the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. My stats tell me that well over 50% of y'all that have been watching the videos still aren't subscribed. I don't know what you're doing. Hit that button, and let's try to get 69 likes on today's video, and let's hop into it. To get an idea of how we got here, let's go back to 2018. The Mavericks finished with just 24 wins. They were led in scoring by Harrison Barnes and Dennis Smith Jr. They went into that draft with the third best odds of the #1 pick, but would eventually land at 5. During that draft, they decided to go up and get their guy, trading for the 3rd overall pick with the Atlanta Hawks, giving up the 5th overall pick in a 2019 first. They decided to grab the most accomplished foreign prospect we had ever seen, Luka Doncic. Doncic was a prospect that it felt like everyone either loved him and felt he was a clear #1 pick, or he was poised to be a bust. It's safe to say the Bulls were right, and that was clear very quickly. As a rookie, he would average 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. With the Mavericks knowing a rebuild wouldn't take long with what appeared to be a future superstar in Luka, they decided to jump on the opportunity and trade for Kristaps Porzingis, giving up DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, Dennis Smith Jr., an unprotected 2021 first rounder, and a top 10 protected first rounder in 2023. Porzingis didn't play that season due to an ACL injury, but that offseason, the Mavericks would sign him to a 5-year max contract worth $158 million. In the 2020 season, Luka would take another jump, becoming one of the best second-year players the league had ever seen, averaging 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists a game. Alongside Kristaps, they would finish the season as the 7th seed and faced off against the Clippers in the first round, but would fall short in 6 games. Going into this season, there was a lot of hype for the Mavericks. Luka was the odds-on favorite to win the MVP award. With very little changes to their roster, we didn't see a massive improvement for this team year over year, but would finish as the 5th seed in the West, again facing the Clippers in the first round. This was one of the weirdest series I've ever seen. The Mavericks, on the back of crazy performances from Luka, were able to steal the first 2 games in Los Angeles. But that would be the trend for the rest of the series. The away team would get the W all the way up until Game 7, where the Clippers were able to advance and bring us to where we are today. Let's start by taking a look at this Mavericks roster. Obviously, this team is headlined by Doncic. In just his 3rd year, averaged 28, 9, and 8, shooting 48% from the field and 35% from 3. He's still going to be on his rookie contract next season, but this team is undoubtedly going to give every dollar possible on his rookie extension, which could probably happen this offseason. Reports have come out that this contract could hit the $40 million mark just 3 years into it, and $46 million in the final year. That's crazy. Then we've got Kristaps Porzingis. Now, Porzingis is the interesting part of this team. On the year, he averaged 20 and 9, shooting 38% from 3, but a lot of concerns around him were really raised in this most recent series. He averaged 13 points and 5 rebounds, shooting 47% from the field and 30% from 3. We talked about him in a recent video. He proved not to be a reliable shot creator and hasn't been the rim protector we thought he'd be early on in his career, or you would expect from someone that is 7'3", a huge reason that this team looked to Boban later in the series. Porzingis could potentially earn $100 million over the next 3 years of his current deal. Now, the good news for this team is they don't really have any other big contracts. Tim Hardaway Jr. is earning $19 million, but he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Josh Richardson has a $12 million player option. It's hard to say whether or not he'll pick that up. Dwight Powell's on a contract that's going to earn him $11 and $12 million over the next 2 seasons, a contract that really isn't looking great considering his performance since coming off an Achilles injury. Maxi Kleber, he's going to earn $9 million a year for the next 2 years. The rest of this roster is on pretty low-level contracts, and really the only other player expected to get decent future money is Jalen Brunson, whose contract is going to be coming to an end at the same time as Luka. With very little other young talent worth mentioning, this is basically the core the Mavericks have, and without crazy future draft assets and the Luka contract expected to hit the books in 2022, this team is coming up on an offseason that could really dictate the next 5 years of this team. It's safe to say this roster, which we just saw against the Clippers, is going to look very different this time next year. Usually with these future videos, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the NBA draft, but there isn't much to say with the Mavericks. The first round pick this season is going to be the 21st pick, but that's going to the Knicks from that Kristaps Porzingis trade. They own all their other future firsts except for 2023, which is going to be going to the Knicks again, but that one is top 10 protected. Their offseason is going to be focused on free agency and the trade market. It's pretty impressive what the Mavericks team was able to do considering how many holes were in this roster. When you try to pinpoint what this team needs to address, you don't really know where to start. They need to find a true second option to take this team to the next jump. Porzingis, as we said, averaged 13 points in this series. That's clearly not going to be the long-term second option. They need more defense across the board. They need more veterans. Out of all the playoff teams, the Mavericks were the only one without a single player that had at least gone to the conference finals. And they need to add more depth. We saw them consistently blow leads when Luka came off the court during this first round series. You could probably keep going, but as far as this free agency goes, the Mavericks are pretty well set up. They could potentially sign a max deal. They've got a lot of flexibility to move some of these guys at mid-level contracts. The only scenario though I really see them signing someone to a max contract would be to really get that secondary shot creator to Luka Doncic, but sadly, this free agency class really doesn't have much of that to offer. There's two players clearly at the top. You've got Kawhi Leonard. This one looked like a potential KD Warriors-esque scenario when the Mavericks were up 2-0 in this series. But now with the Clippers advancing, it's really hard to predict Kawhi's future. If this team goes on to win the title, it's hard to see him leaving, but if that doesn't happen and Kawhi decides to move on from the Clippers, the Mavericks are an interesting landing spot. I would have to imagine playing alongside Luka, whose talent Kawhi just experienced firsthand, has to be enticing. But as of right now, it's hard to put the Mavericks even close to the top of the running. Then you've got Chris Paul. He's having an amazing season for the Suns. He took this team to another level, finishing as a second seed in the West, and they just took down the reigning champion Lakers in the first round of the playoffs. Reports have come out that Chris Paul is going to decline his $40 million player option in hopes of a new, roughly $100 million across 3-year contract. If the Mavericks knew they're going to get the Chris Paul of today for the next 3 years, I don't think there's a much better addition for this team, but it's hard to imagine that being the case with a 36-year-old Paul. The other two names I think we're going to hear a lot when it comes to the Mavericks free agency. You've got DeMar DeRozan. At 31 years old, he's going to be hitting the open market, and I think it's safe to say he's not coming back to the Spurs. This past season, he averaged 22 points and 7 assists on 50% shooting. I think he's an interesting option, but I do have some questions about his fit alongside Luka. Then you've got Kyle Lowry. He's on his way out of Toronto, and the Mavericks seem like a great fit, but unless it's a very short-term deal, I think you're really playing it risky with Lowry, who's 35 years old. Throughout history, it's been very, very clear. It's rare that you get a proper return on your investment, giving long-term deals to players at this age, an age a vast majority of players never make it to. Names like Dennis Schroeder, Norman Powell, and Mike Conley, I would also expect to come up in the conversation. Now, yes, they've got a lot of work to do in free agency, especially on the role player side of things. They're almost forced to spend money with the extensions they're about to dish out a year from now, but this team really needs that second option to take them to the next jump, and I think the most interesting scenarios for them are actually going to be via a trade. Now, the Mavericks really don't have much to offer, but seeing the Nets somehow put a package together for James Harden, I really don't think it's impossible. A huge part of them being able to get something done is going to be the league's perception of Kristaps. I think they're just hoping he has neutral value and it's not looked at as a bad contract. But if a big deal does go down, it is hard to imagine him not being involved. We talked about this in the last video, but there might be some interesting opportunities for the Mavericks to take a gamble in a trade. A name we brought up was Kemba Walker. It's expected that the Celtics are going to be active this offseason, and there's a high chance they look to move on from Kemba. Maybe a team gives up more on one end, but I think it's very interesting considering where both these teams are. I think this could go wrong for the Mavericks, but if Kemba can stay on the court, he has the upside to be that much needed secondary shot creator I think they're looking for. Another interesting scenario with a Kristaps swap would be with the Warriors in a deal involving Wiggins. Lastly, I want to talk about those home run trades. The obvious one that's going to come up is Bradley Beal. With just 1 year and a player option left, they're actually in a pretty decent position to get something done. This is probably the best case scenario for their offseason. Now, if Bradley Beal really comes up on the market, you should expect a full-on bidding war, but I think it's also fair to expect the Mavericks to be one of the top contenders. We're also hearing some rumors of possible big changes in Portland. Hard to imagine the Mavericks getting something done for Lillard, but in the event that he's traded, maybe they can get something done for McCollum, a similar situation with the Clippers. If Kawhi moves on, maybe the Mavericks go after Paul George. To sum things up, this Mavericks team is going to look very different very soon. If a trade opportunity comes up, they're going to get involved, but at the least, they need to add some veteran depth. It's going to be fun, but this isn't the only team in a situation like this. I'm thinking about doing one with the Lakers. Tell me in the comments if you want to see that. But if you like the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.